We are talking about a powerful icon of many years ago who died, but his name still exists because of the life he lived before he passed on. In the shadows of history, there exists a figure whose name alone stirs a whirlwind of emotions. Adolf Hitler, a man who rose from the ashes of a broken nation only to plunge the world into one of its darkest chapters. His story is not just one of power, but of manipulation, ideology, and madness that echoed through every corner of the earth. But how did this man, with so much hatred in his heart, command the loyalty of millions? How did a single individual lead a nation to the brink of annihilation and reshape the course of history forever? Adolf Hitler, one of history's most notorious figures, is a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone familiar with the devastation he caused. But how did this man, who once dreamed of becoming an artist, lived in poverty, and had few friends, rise to become the architect of World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust? What drove him to seek power, and how did his personal struggles shape the course of global history? Born on April 20, 1889, in the small Austrian town of Braunau am Inn, Hitler came into the world at the dawn of a new century, a time of upheaval and change across Europe. From an early age, Adolf showed signs of being an ambitious, yet deeply troubled young boy. He would later claim that his father, Adolf Hitler, was strict and unsympathetic toward his artistic dreams, creating a strained relationship between them. But it wasn't just his father's rigid discipline that marked his early years. Young Adolf's perception of the world around him, including the rise of nationalism and anti-Semitic sentiment in Austria, would set the stage for the dark path he would eventually follow. His education was tumultuous, marked by poor grades, difficulty in maintaining friendships, and a sense of alienation. At the age of 16, he dropped out of school, his artistic ambitions crushed by failure. Little did the world know that this young man, rejected by the art academies of Vienna, would one day command a nation with terrifying power. His journey into the world of politics began not with a grand plan, but rather with an unremarkable period of living in poverty, wandering the streets of Vienna, and finding solace in a burgeoning nationalist and anti-Semitic movement. The story of Adolf Hitler is not just the story of one man. It is the story of a nation, a world plunged into war, and a devastating ideology that would lead to the deaths of millions. But to truly understand how Hitler rose to power and what motivated him, we must go back to his childhood, his years of struggle, and the events that shaped his violent worldview. Adolf Hitler's early years were marked by instability and the feeling of being out of place. Born in the small town of Braunau am Inn, Austria, he was the fourth of 6 children. His father, Alois Hitler, was a customs official, strict and harsh in his dealings with his children. Alois was not an affectionate man, and his relationship with Adolf was strained from the very beginning. Adolf's mother, Clara, was more caring and nurturing, but she too struggled to provide for the family in a world that seemed to be falling apart. Hitler's family moved several times during his early years, creating a sense of instability. In 1896, his brother Edmund died of measles, and young Adolf was devastated. This marked a significant turning point in his life, making him feel even more isolated and disconnected from the world around him. He was a sensitive child, prone to bouts of melancholy, but also intensely driven to find something that gave him purpose. At school, Hitler was a mediocre student. His teachers noted that he was bright in some subjects, particularly in history, but lacked discipline and focus. He performed poorly in math and Latin, subjects that he needed to excel in to pursue a higher education. His true passion, however, was art. Adolf dreamt of becoming an artist, and from an early age, he spent hours sketching landscapes, scenes of rural life, and architectural designs. But his dreams were crushed when he applied to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, only to be rejected twice. This rejection shattered his self-confidence and deepened his bitterness. It would be a decisive moment in his life. He began to view himself as misunderstood, and this sense of alienation would only grow stronger as he entered adulthood. After the rejection from the Art Academy, Adolf moved to Vienna, a city that was buzzing with intellectual and political activity. He lived in extreme poverty, often relying on the charity of others. He spent his days wandering the streets, attending lectures on history and politics, and immersing himself in the growing nationalist and anti-Semitic ideologies that were beginning to take root in Austria and Germany. In Vienna, Hitler became increasingly exposed to the ideas of German nationalism. He was drawn to the rhetoric of radical thinkers who blamed Jews, Marxists, and other minority groups for the struggles of the German people. This poisonous ideology began to form the bedrock of Hitler's worldview. He would later claim that during this time he developed a deep-seated hatred for Jews, whom he blamed for the decline of German culture and the troubles in Austria. He also began to develop a fascination with the idea of a Greater Germany, a unified German-speaking nation that would dominate Europe. These ideas would later become central to Nazi ideology. Yet, at this point, Hitler was still an unknown figure, struggling to survive in a city where he had no friends and no means of support. However, as Hitler absorbed nationalist ideas, he also became enamored with the figure of Karl Lueger, the anti-Semitic mayor of Vienna. Lueger's success in building a political movement based on racial purity and anti-Semitism would serve as a model for Hitler's own political career. Yet despite all this, Hitler remained a largely solitary figure without a clear direction in life. He would later describe his time in Vienna as a period of deep personal suffering, but also one that provided him with the ideological foundations for his future political career. World War I would become a defining moment for Adolf Hitler. In 1913, after years of struggling in Vienna, Hitler moved to Munich, Germany. The outbreak of war in 1914 gave him a sense of purpose. He quickly enlisted in the Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment and was sent to the front lines. During the war, Hitler was known for his bravery and determination. He was wounded twice, once in 1916 during the Battle of the Somme, and again in 1918 during a British gas attack. He spent months in hospitals recovering, and during this time, his ideas about the future of Germany began to take shape. He became convinced that Germany had been stabbed in the back by traitors at home, particularly by Jews and communists, who he believed had undermined the war effort. This belief would later shape his political agenda and set the stage for the rise of the Nazi Party. By the time the war ended in 1918, Germany was in turmoil. The defeat in the war had led to widespread disillusionment and resentment among the German people. The Weimar Republic, the democratic government established after the war, was weak and unstable. This created the perfect environment for Hitler, a man with an intense desire to restore Germany's honor and power. After the war, Hitler returned to Munich, where he was initially employed as a spy for the German army. It was during this time that he came into contact with the German Workers' Party, DAP, a small nationalist group led by Anton Drexler. In 1920, Hitler joined the DAP, and soon after, he became one of its most prominent members. He quickly gained a reputation as a powerful orator, captivating audiences with his fiery speeches about the need to restore Germany's greatness. The DAP was a precursor to the Nazi Party, and under Hitler's leadership, the group began to grow rapidly. In 1923, Hitler attempted to seize power through a failed coup known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The plot was foiled, and Hitler was arrested and sentenced to prison. It was during his time in prison that he wrote his manifesto, Mein Kampf, in which he outlined his vision for Germany and the world. His time in prison turned out to be a crucial period in his political career. He used the publicity surrounding his trial and incarceration to gain national attention and grow his following. By the late 1920s, Germany was suffering from the effects of the Great Depression, and the Weimar government was increasingly seen as ineffective. Hitler and the Nazi Party capitalized on this unrest, offering simple yet dangerous solutions. Hitler promised to restore Germany's power, eliminate Jews and communists, and overturn the Treaty of Versailles, which many Germans saw as a humiliating symbol of their defeat in World War I. Through a combination of propaganda, violent intimidation by the SA, Sturmabteilung, the Nazi paramilitary group, and strategic political alliances, Hitler gradually gained influence. In 1933, he was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Within months, he consolidated his power. using the Reichstag fire and the Enabling Act to suppress opposition and eliminate civil liberties. We are going to stop the first episode here, and I know you can't wait to get to the end of the Adolf Hitler story. But trust me, the last part of the episode, which will be out in no time, I'm not going to leave you hanging. Part 2 is around the corner, and you will be notified days before it will be released. Hit on the subscribe button, turn the notifications, and get ready for the ride. The real drama's just about to start on the next part, and you'll be the first to know when it drops. I want you to tell me something we need to know. Thank you so much, and God bless you.